Hello everybody and welcome to the LPL Recap, the first ever episode. We're aware that there are 7 days of LPL every single week and you can't watch every single game, so I'm here to give you a bit of a recap on the most important ones that happen each week. This one will be recapping the first 5 days we've had of LPL, and I can talk you through each and every single game we're going to go through. OMG versus RNG to kick us off, WE versus Suning, V5 versus OMG, LGD versus E-Star, and finally FPX versus LNG. I wish I could go into every game for you, but there just isn't time to go into them. So with that said, let's jump into our first series that I'm going to talk about today, and that's OMG against RNG. This is a historical matchup within the LPL, and even more so because Uzi has officially retired and Lang Xing has been replaced by the new top laner, Nu. You can see him right there on the Wukong, wrecking OMG's face. And Xiaolong Bao especially looked dominant throughout this series, proactively ganking for Xiaohu and alongside Xiaohu on this Twisted Fate, setting up RNG with a huge lead in the series. And you can see that in game number 1. This team fight was pretty much, as Atlas would say in the LCK, RNG just slapping OMG with their wallets. And obviously, this was all off the back of a big old snowball, and Betty was the benefactor, managing to grab himself a pentakill in his first game of the split. But when it came to game number 2, OMG did a much better job in the early game of staying even in gold. But ultimately, it came down to Xiaolong Bao once again on this Lee Sin was styling all over OMG when it came to the team fights. That's what it all came down to. And RNG, they look like a whole new team. They look like a team that is ready to take to the stage once more. And RNG not making playoffs last split. Suddenly there's a lot of questions around them, but Xiaolong Bao stepping up. Xiaohu is stepping up, and you can see the triple kill here for Xiaolong Bao. He's looking fantastic on this Lee Sin. And most importantly, this is a team that is playing with confidence. And it makes me wonder what is ahead for RNG. Not a good look for OMG, though, it has to be said. With that one in the books, let's take a look at our second series that we're going to jump into. It was WE up against Suning, and this matchup was very much about Suning trying to survive. The first game was all about WE playing the WE style. They got Echo for Beisheng, they got Pantheon for Teachamar, and they were able to snowball off of a lead in the early game. They got a lot of gold for themselves. You can see they managed to get control of the Drakes after the first 2, getting 3 Infernals for themselves. They got 1 win. But then suddenly, Suning came out of nowhere. Angel, you can see him on the casting, was able to annihilate Beisheng, deny the Infernal Soul in game number 2. And from that point on, it felt like WE couldn't get themselves together. They couldn't win out these team fights. And Angel's Kassadin, we all know it. It has an incredible win record, and he's an incredible player on it. And the team fights from Suning just looked magnificent. Then, game number 3, it got even crazier when it came to the team fighting from Suning. They weathered the storm once again from WE, who brought a set mid lane in their composition. And with Bin just surviving all of this damage, with Huanfeng on the Ashe having some incredible crystalline arrows, suddenly we got to see why Suning are considered scrim gods right now. Because when they're playing on the same page, when they're team fighting right, this team looks dominant. They managed to beat WE 2-1 in the end. Phenomenal stuff for Suning, and phenomenal stuff if you guys are fans of them at home. But then we moved on to, or let's move on to our third series that we're going to talk about today. It's going to be V5 versus OMG. Now V5, this is after their first win of the split that they managed to get over DMO. OMG did look like they were going to be able to give some kind of a fight here. V5 managing to win out the first series as Hacker went way too deep and V5 pounced on them, controlling the Dragons in the early game. And when they thought Bubu was caught out, OMG overextended too far. He had a stopwatch and he had the rest of the team able to get on into the fight, help him out, and then Mole could teleport all the way to the mid lane with the Baron already on them. V5 were able to close the first game out confidently. Going into the second game, though, OMG were not done just yet. With SMLZ happy on this Aphelios, they were able to win out some convincing team fights. There were a lot of fights in this game, especially in the late game. I can't show you all of them, but OMG did look incredibly good. SMLZ especially on this Aphelios, and SamD desperately trying to do things on the Kalista. They got the Baron, but it wasn't enough to get the game. It evened things up, and then V5, coming into the third game of the series, really turned things on, and it was about the way they were playing the map. You can see in this clip, OMG, they get one tower in the bottom lane, but they're punished for it and lose a kill. In the meantime, Weiwei and Mole drop their Herald in the mid lane, get 2 towers for themselves, and that slingshot V5 into the lead. And then just check this fight out from PP God and SamD. This new bot lane duo for V5 look insane. It looked so good for OMG to start this fight off. It felt like SMLZ might be able to pop off once again, but PP God walks on up, exhausts him, stops him doing anything, and then in comes SamD to clean up the fight and grab himself a quadra kill. V5 win out the series 2-1 in the end, and what a way to do it against OMG as well. V5, the team that everyone thought was a nobody back in spring, they didn't win a single series. Now, looking like a middle-of-the-table team at least. We'll see if they can keep that ball rolling. LGD versus E-Star. Both of these teams very much had something to prove coming on in. E-Star with a change in the mid lane, Fun replacing Crying, and LGD on the other side with pretty much an entirely new roster, just Kramer and Peanut, the 2 men standing for this team. And LGD are looking really good, but E-Star did manage to start this series off strong. A lot of back and forth fights between these two teams, and honestly, the whole series felt like a battle of mechanics. E-Star were able to win out the first one. You saw the final fight of it there, and they were able to snowball that one. But E-Star consistently trying to force these engages onto LGD, but LGD, they had the Infernal Dragon stack. They had a gold lead in game number 2, and E-Star, it felt a little bit like those fights were just last chance saloon, and then game number 3, similar story. LGD were able to snowball a little bit more effectively, though. They nearly ended the game here, but E-Star, managing to hold on by the skin of their teeth, seemed to forget that they were up against a twisted fate. And this final moment of the fight, they're fighting over the Cloud Dragon, but you can see Xie is about to respawn on the left of your screen. Immediately teleports straight on into the base. While all of this fighting is going off, E-Star are stuck. LGD just have to stop the ports, and it means that Xie could get into the base and finish things out all by himself. An amazing way for LGD to get their first win on the board for the split. And LGD, they've got to be happy with their new roster. And E-Star, I mean, it was about as close as it could have been, so I don't think it's too bad of a sign for them as we move forward in this split. The final game, though, that I want to tell you guys about is a whole different story. The world champions, FPX, went against LNG and somehow lost. FPX started the series strong. They were able to win things out in the first game with LWX popping off on this Ezreal and managing to win out the fights in the end. A double TP off the back of that fight coming out from them was able to close out the game. But then LNG just turned things on. They snowballed every single early game, controlling the dragons. And then when we got to the later stages of the game, Maple feels like a changed mid laner. Earlier on in this split, we saw them against Suning, and Maple was nowhere to be seen for the whole series. But against FPX, Maple turned it on. It felt like it was the Flash Wolves player back once again, and FPX, even in the early game, even when we know FPX to be at their strongest, LNG were taking it to them. Light as well on his Aphelios, but also on the Ashe earlier in this series, looking incredibly good. And suddenly, we're having some real questions about where LNG stands in the mix of the LPL teams right now, because FPX could not match their early game prowess. They were able to snowball that one, and then the Wombo combo comes on through once again. This was with Doan B on the Galio as well, but Light was there on the Aphelios. He was able to just free fire this entire fight, and they were so far ahead from the early snowball. There was nothing FPX could do, and honestly, completely uncharacteristic loss from FPX, but uncharacteristic win from LNG as well. When you look at their spring split, when you look at their first series of summer, I don't know what they ate for breakfast that day, but I'm excited for what's next for LNG. But that is all of the series that we have time to recap today. I hope you enjoyed the first episode. If you've got any feedback, make sure you hit me up on Twitter and let me know what's going on. Let me know what series you want me to cover for the second week of the LPL. But that's been it. I've been Munchables. This has been the LPL Recap. Make sure you join us next time. for watching the LPL recap. If you want to see the full episode, head over to the LPL English YouTube channel.